What's up, guys? If you are here because you're looking for a Porsche 996 Cabriolet review by an air-cooled Porsche maniac, then I have great news for you because you are in the right place. That's exactly what I'm going to give to you today. In this video, I'm going to explain what I'm doing sitting in this water-cooled 996. I'm going to take you through my feelings on the driving impressions, what you could expect in driving this car. I'm going to share with you why this car actually surprised me in a way that makes me believe that it's a lot better than people give it credit for. I'm also going to take you through the mods that this particular example has, because I think that's important as to why I think it's a great car. And then finally, at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you how I crashed this car. Well, crash might be a little bit of an overstatement, but definitely damaged it. And it sucks because this car doesn't belong to me, it belongs to a buddy. So I have some cheater notes right here. I want to talk to you about the mods. According to the owner of this car, these are the mods. It has a short shifter on it, which I absolutely love. It's got a Pfister muffler, a K&N air filter, and get ready for this alphabet soup. An LN, IMS, RMS, AOS done. And 996, guys, please tell me what the hell all this means. I do know that the IMS bearing is what one of these initials stands for, and this car has actually had it done twice. It has G2 caliper paint, Porterfield R4S pads, maybe R4s, I don't know, Rennline wheel studs, custom coated wheels, H&R coilovers, and under-seat powered sub and upgraded speakers and amps. So that's what is going on with this car, and I think these mods actually really contribute a lot to the enjoyment of this car, or why I find it so engaging. So let's get started. By the way, if you could, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. 99% of my videos are about air-cooled Porsches, but I do occasionally do a water-cooled video too, whether it's like my personal review or an owner interview of somebody who owns water-cooled. So if that's your thing, if you're looking for more 911 content, please subscribe. Let us now get underway, and I'll tell you a little bit about this car. So this 2001 996 Cabriolet belongs to a guy by the name of Eric Lind. Eric is a buddy of mine and my mechanic. He currently has my 1986 Guards Red Carrera at his house. He's doing some repairs to that car. I'm going to be putting it on the market, and so I wanted to get it all tip-top before I do that. But while he was working on the 86, he needed to give me a car, or he elected to give me a car to drive. And when he first let me borrow the car, I was thinking, oh, hey, this is just great functional transportation. It has air conditioning, which is nice because it's super hot this time of year where I live in North Carolina. So I appreciated the AC, and I just appreciated a set of wheels that I could drive home and not have to deal with like an Uber or anything. So imagine my surprise, though, when I began to drive the car and I found myself beginning to bond with it. So first of all, the day that I brought it home, it was like 100 degrees, so the AC was essential. But what I found was the driving experience of this car was more engaging than I had initially thought. So you hear a lot of guys talk about, oh, hey, 996 is as analog as air-cooled. I'm going to definitely debate that. The way this motor makes power is very different than my air-cooled Porsches. But with that criticism aside, I mean, I will say this. The car has some analog characteristics to it. The steering feels very direct. The shifting is very fun, which I think actually has a lot to do with this short shifter kit. And the exhaust definitely makes this feel much more of an alive driving experience. The car is actually fun. It handles quite nicely. It's certainly not as, I just almost hit a vulture with it, man. So I would hate to do that on top of the other little boo-boo I made, which I'll get into in a moment. But the car is definitely fun to drive. It is not boring. The top down, you can't beat that this time of year. It's begun to cool off a little bit, so we're getting into the fall season, and you really can't discount the fun of a 911 wide open throttle with a cool exhaust in the top down. I mean, it's definitely, as they say, intoxicating. So this engine makes little to no power down low. I'll say it makes even less power than my 993 or my 86 does down low. So this is not something that has a bunch of torque at lower revs. It is fun once you get around the upper middle section of the tachometer. Growing up, my parents had a 1998 Boxster, and as a 16-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, whatever it was then, I had a lot of fun in that car. It wasn't a 911, but it was definitely a fun driving experience nonetheless. And this car right here reminds me a lot of that Boxster. Not a lot of power down low, but if you keep it in the upper to middle part of the rev range, it definitely moves. It's not going to leave you writing home to your mom about how fast it is, but it's got some get up and go. The rev match, while not as fun as my air-cooled Porsches, is definitely there. And so that's fun as well. It's easy to blip and rev match in. From a handling perspective, this car sticks for sure. It's not as good as my 993 for sure. I'm running coilovers on that car, the PSS 10s, and they're second to none in my view. I must say, even though the IMS bearing has been done in this car, like, I feel like when I really rev it high, I get kind of worried. I'm paranoid about stuff like that though. By the way, as overdone as that IMS bearing conversation is, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. So handling on this car is definitely nice though. It's got the suspension that I referenced earlier. It sticks to the road, it stays flat, has little to no body roll. If you have one of these 996s, I would say that whatever he's running is definitely worth doing. And I'll put the actual part information on this suspension setup down in the comments. The comfort on this car, man, I'll touch on that in the interior overview segment of this video, but these seats are money, man. I have found that Porsche factory seats, which I think are made by Recaro, they tend to be super comfortable, and this car is definitely not any different than the others that I've experienced. The seat's wide. I don't know that it's going to hold you in place with like excessive spirited driving, but certainly if you want to put in a whole weekend of ripping in a car like this, or maybe you're not going to rip in this car, maybe you're going to take your wife or significant other up into the mountains to enjoy a weekend of leaf peeping. But either way, if that's what you're going to do, these seats, I think you could spend hours and hours and hours in them and be just fine. In terms of like the instruments and how easy they are to work, I always found this HVAC system, it's the same one that was in that Boxster I referenced earlier, very intuitive, easy to use. I do like the button design on this car too. Ergonomically, very pleasing to the touch. I'll touch on the interior in a little more detail in that segment as well. It definitely has a period quirky look to it, that's for sure. You know, the interior, it kind of felt like at the time it was okay. It felt a little cheap. Over the period of years between when the car came out and today, it felt very, very cheap. But I'll say this, it's starting to come back into its own, if you will, just because it's unmistakable. This steering wheel, I like it. This is the steering wheel they had in the 993. They carried it over to the 996. At a certain point, they switched over to a 3-spoke in the 996, but this one has the 4-spoke. I told you I'd tell you a little bit about why I think this car is worth looking into. So, I mean, first of all, for me, I am a die-hard air-cooled Porsche fan. I've tried a couple water-cooled in my time. I had a 2009 C4S Coupe. It was in PDK. The car was definitely cool. I felt like the motor sounded like a vacuum cleaner. I mean, it just didn't have a soul, so I sold that car. I tried a 997.1 turbo. That thing was stupid fast. It was too fast for me. I did a video about that car. I'll put a card up in case you're interested about why I sold it. So I share that with you only to say, hey, I have a little background in water-cooled, and when I sold that turbo, I swore that I would never own another water-cooled Porsche, but I'm going to say this to you right now, and you're going to be shocked. I could see myself owning a 996 Cabriolet. This car is quick enough to be enjoyed. It's comfortable, and I think that what's cool about this car, the coolest thing is the price point. So I know that Eric paid something like 25 grand for this car, and so I did poke around on Bring a Trailer a little bit just to see what they're going for now, and it looks like from an auction perspective, for a clean example of one of these 996 Cabriolets, you're going to be looking at maybe 30 to 35 now, maybe 40, depending on mileage. So much like any other 911, they've gotten a little bit more expensive, but that still feels really, really I'm not going to say inexpensive because that's not a small amount of money, but it seems like based on what I'm getting from my driving experience of this particular car here, I feel like you're getting a lot of value. I mean, I guess I'm surprised to say this because I'm normally pretty hard on the 996 in general. I am not a fan of the fried egg headlights. I'm not a fan of how the motor sounds. I'm not a fan of just kind of how the engine feels a little bit soulless compared to air-cooled. But I feel like this car might be ownable. So I don't know, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, right? So I guess it really depends on how you found this video and why you're here. Like, are you a 996 enthusiast and you think I'm a total bastard for saying that these cars are almost like laughable in a way? Or are you an air-cooled guy who might be surprised to hear me say that I might own one of those? So tell me in the comments. So that's my impression of the driving experience. So let's now jump over to the exterior comparison to my 993 and the interior comparison to my 993. And then at the end of this video, as promised, I'm going to take you to the place where I wrecked this car, smashed up the bumper, and put myself in a position where this review is actually going to cost me a good amount of money. So let's get to it. All right, while I'm at it, I thought I'd just give you guys a chance to look at these two cars side by side. First of all, I hate shooting in my driveway because the sun really kind of washes out whatever I'm shooting over here, so bear with me. First thing I wanted just to point your attention to is the Polar silver paint compared to the Arctic silver paint. Polar has some hint of blue in it. I love Polar silver. I don't really like Arctic silver. It feels very like rental car color, safe, boring. Hey, let's just jam out a bunch of these cars, not very special. So if you hate me because I hate Arctic, tell me in the comments. I mean, no offense to anybody, I just think it's not a great color. They're just very boring and plain. I mean, I'm a color guy. Like this Ossi blue over here, pretty remarkable to me just because it's very interesting. Arctic silver, not so much. Thankfully, the owner painted the calipers to give you a little visual interest. He also Cerakoted, I believe, the wheel. The topic about the exterior design of the 996 is these fried egg headlights. This topic has been beaten to death, but since I'm sitting here talking at you, I'm gonna give you my opinion. I never really loved them. I do think they're kind of like the interior coming into their own a bit. It just doesn't captivate me at that front end. Whereas this 993, and yeah, I've upgraded the bumper. I don't know, man. I just think the design is just so much better. They took a real step backwards when they went over here to this design. I don't know if that arrow is factory or what. I'll have to ask him. Back end. I mean, you're really kind of getting into an apples and oranges comparison back here. That said, I mean, you get a sense for what the rear end looks like. The 996 Coupe is very similar to this. I did not think any side-by-side comparison between the Porsche 993 911 and the Porsche 996 Cabriolet would be complete without an interior comparison really quickly for you guys. So for you air-cooled faithful, feast your eyes on the glorious interior of the 993. No nonsense, nothing too modern about it. I certainly won't dwell on this too much. There's plenty of content on this channel about the 993 and the interior mods I've done. Let's go over here and just enjoy the fact that thanks to top-down fun, we're able to peer at the interior unfettered. So there's a lot of commentary on the forums and the Facebook groups, a lot of hate for this interior, and I can see why, right? So for me, it just looks cheap. Now, I'm gonna back off of that criticism though and just say this. I can see, kind of like the headlights, how this interior is coming into its own a bit. So some pros of this interior. First of all, it's definitely quirky, period, interesting, unmistakable at this point, and it is super comfortable. These seats are great. It's not fair to compare them to the seats in my 993 as I'm running those Recaro Sportsters, but I will say this, the stock comfort seats in the 993 are freaking great. They're just as good as these are. Here's the door for you. They retain the carpet on the door. Back seat, Again, so convenient with the cab. At least you guys can see this with ease. So very traditional and remarkable back seat. Has a little more room than the 993. Overall, this car is larger than the 993. So there you have it, guys. If you're familiar with 996s, then maybe you're not as familiar with the 993. Here you go. And if you haven't spent much time in the 996, there you go. All right, guys, as promised, here is the scene of the accident, as it were. So if you've been around the channel, you might recognize this setting here. This is where I like to bring cars to shoot drone footage and so forth of them when I'm featuring them on my channel. And it was no different with this 996 Cabriolet. So the other day I had it parked right here. I got out of the car, I had pulled the e-brake up, started walking away, and I happened to look back and the car was rolling, bam. It hit this rather substantial tree trunk over here, and it definitely screwed the bumper up. So I've been able to massage it a little bit. The bumper still needs to be repaired by a professional shop, which sucks, so that's not going to be cheap, and it's going to be all on me. I feel horrible towards Eric. Sorry, man. And I'm very, very grateful still for him to him for letting me drive and review this 996 Cabriolet. So there you have it, guys. I'm human, and I do hope Eric lets me borrow his car again. So I hope you've gotten something out of this video. I do think this car is worth owning, so if you're considering one, I would recommend pulling the trigger. It's fun. So I hope you've gotten something out of this video, and I do hope to see you next time.